Hey, good to see you. Thanks again for joining us. My name is Caleb, and we are in a series called Reset, and what we're doing is we are just talking about how do we respond to the disruptions that come into our lives. In just a few moments here, we're going to hear a worship song from my brother Isaac. Just so thankful that he has continued to serve alongside of us and to help us as we try to encourage you during this time of quarantine and this time that we're stuck in our homes. So as we get into it, we trust that this will be an encouragement to you. Thanks for joining us.
How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountains I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. And then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living home. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living home. And hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living home. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe. And out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your very body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. And Jesus, yours is the victory. Whoa, and hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living home. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living home. Jesus Christ, my living
Oh man, I haven't played Mario Kart in forever. This is so fun. Oh, hey Brayden, don't pull on that, honey. Let's go. Oh, I'm gonna beat you.
No, you're not. I
Probably
played
not.
this so many times growing up. So many hours invested in this game. Oh man, I was just about to beat you in Mario Kart. He hit the game card and it froze.
Yeah, it's okay. We still love you, buddy.
We do. I guess we just need to hit the reset button and try again.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right, hey, so glad again to have this time with you. We're in our series called Reset, and sometimes in life we have to hit the reset button. And the goal of this is that we would be able to set our priorities and our thinking and our focus back onto God. Disruptions are things that change our circumstances. They are things that change our plans. And what they do is they remind us that we are not in control, and it points us to the one who is in control. We've talked about a few different people in the Bible so far. In our first week, we looked at the life of Joseph. And from him, we learned that you and I can worship God and we can help the people around us in the middle of life's disruptions. We don't have to wait till things get better. We can worship and we can help others now. And then we learn from the life of Rahab that as we look at life, as we go through life, there are going to be times when we can see that a disruption is coming. And what we can do, as we learn from her life, is we can learn to recognize that God is at work, and then we can trust Him that He is good and that He is going to do what's best for us. And then last week we looked at the life of Daniel, and what we learned from Daniel's life is that one of the things that are really important if we're going to respond right to disruptions is that we need to determine ahead of time that we're going to honor God. We need to make the choice that we are going to serve God no matter what disruptions come. Tonight we are looking at the lives of Daniel's three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And what we're going to see is we're going to see men who chose to honor God and live for Him even though they were under threat of death by fire. And so as I'm thinking about this tonight, as we're looking at this, one of the things that the entertainment world does really well, especially movies, is they have this ability to suck us in and get us to spend time watching their films. And I think, simply put, the reason that they're able to do this is their stories have someone who is the main character, and then they have an antagonist, and then throughout the whole film, what they're doing is they're taking us through these ups and downs, and they present us with a problem or something that the main character is facing, and there's points in the film where we're not even sure that they're going to be able to make it, that they're going to be able to get through it. But typically, by the end of the film, what we find is that they have overcome, that they have made it through, that they were able to accomplish what was needed to be accomplished to have victory. Here's the thing, though. In life, we know that not every story ends that way. We know that there's a lot of suffering. We know that there's a lot of things that happen in life where people don't always get the outcome that they want. And what we're going to see tonight as we look at the life of these three young men is that they were facing an outcome that they couldn't control and that they surely didn't want. But in the midst of it, they were able to serve and honor God because they believed that He was able. They knew they weren't able, but they trusted in the one who is. And so as we look at our text tonight, we're going to be in Daniel chapter 3. And just to give us some context and some background on where we're at, just a little bit of a reminder of who these three are. These three men, along with Daniel, were residents of the kingdom of Judah. The Babylonians came in, besieged it, conquered it, and they have taken these four young men back to the land of Babylon to serve the king, King Nebuchadnezzar. And we know that based on the scripture that these four young men, they had become very influential and that they had become the best advisors to the king, and he valued them and he wanted them and he wanted their help. And we know that Daniel was a man who was given the spirit-empowered ability to tell the meaning of people's dreams. King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that he couldn't understand. None of the magicians, none of the enchanters throughout the entire kingdom were able to decipher what it meant. But Daniel, through the spirit-empowered ability given to him, was able to help the king understand what his dream meant. Here's just in short what the dream was about. Basically, the king of Babylon they were the most powerful of all the other kingdoms. And their kingdom was represented by their earthly possession of gold. But in the vision, what we find is that there is a stone that is made not by human hands, and this stone conquers the gold, that conquers all the other kingdoms. And what we learn from this vision and what Daniel expresses to the king is that God is all-powerful. He is the one who has put King Nebuchadnezzar in his position, and God is the one who has given him the prominence and the success that he has had. The message here and what God was trying to accomplish and to communicate to Nebuchadnezzar is that he needs to humble himself and understand that it is God's goodness that has given him all of these things. And that if he doesn't humble himself, that an end will come to his reign. And so, unfortunately, we know that King Nebuchadnezzar didn't listen to this vision very long, because not long after this, in chapter 3, we find that he has a statue made that represents his likeness, and it's made out of, you guessed it, gold. And so King Nebuchadnezzar has made this massive statue that represents him. It's made out of gold. And when the music plays, you know the story, everyone is to fall down and to worship this statue. And anyone who does not do that, they would be immediately thrown into the fiery furnace. So the three young men are put in this position where they are being forced to worship a false god. And we know that they refuse. We know that when the music plays, they are the only ones who don't bow down. And they are brought before the king, King Nebuchadnezzar, and surprisingly, they're not thrown into the fiery furnace immediately. And I think the reason for that is because of their value to him. He gives them one last chance, and he tells them that they need to bow down. If they don't, they're going into the furnace. And he says this in a very flippant way in chapter 3, in verse 15. This is what the king says. Now, if you are ready, when you hear the sound of the horn, pipe, lyre, trigon, harp, bagpipe, and every kind of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, well and good. But if you do not worship, you shall immediately be cast into a burning, fiery furnace. And catch this. And who is the God who will deliver you out of my hands? It's very obvious that Nebuchadnezzar has not paid attention to the vision that God sent his way. He, in the pride of his heart, basically believes he is all-powerful and that no one, including God, can rescue these three men from his power. And so we find their response in verses 16 through 18. So let me read this for us. This is what it says in verses 16 through 18. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we have no need to answer you in this matter. If this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. And at that, he has the three men bound, and they are thrown into the fiery furnace. We're told that the furnace is made to be 7 times hotter than usual. The men who throw them into the furnace are actually consumed by the fire, and they die. But just a few moments later, in the furnace, another individual appears. And we know from this story, and we believe that this is the pre-incarnate Jesus Christ, who is with these three men. And what we find is that in the middle of their greatest time of need, in the middle of their greatest suffering, that God is present with them. And here's what I think is really, really impactful. These young men, they refused to worship, they refused to dishonor God in obeying King Nebuchadnezzar. And this is what they said. The first thing is, they believe that God is able. They believe that their God, who has all power, who created all things, they believe that their God was able to rescue them and to keep them from suffering in that furnace. And yet, they also said this, if God doesn't rescue us, we still will not worship your gods. And I think this is really powerful, because sometimes suffering happens and it doesn't stop. And the thing that we learn from these three men is that because they believe that God is able, they were willing to trust him if they were rescued, and they were willing to trust him if they weren't rescued. And here's why. They knew that God's kingdom was represented by the stone not made by human hands that would wipe out all the other kingdoms in the end. They know that God's kingdom is an eternal kingdom, and that they will forever be with him. And even if they suffer in this time, that they have a hope that goes beyond this world. They believe that God is able. And so in summary, this is what we learned really quickly. First, King Nebuchadnezzar is prideful. He has not listened to the vision. He has not humbled himself before God. And the second thing we learned is that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, in their humility, trust and believe that God is able, even if God doesn't deliver based on what they want in that moment. And so here is what we take away. Time and time again, God has demonstrated that He is able. Throughout history, throughout many people's lives, God has shown Himself able to rescue. He's shown Himself able to keep people from suffering. But here's what He's also done. God has shown Himself able that through Jesus Christ and through His death and resurrection, we have the ultimate victory over suffering. We have the ultimate victory over death. Even if we don't get what we desire in this life, we ultimately have a greater hope and we have a greater blessing waiting for us, and that is eternal life with God in heaven. Here's our bottom line as we think about how we respond to disruptions. When we believe God is able, disruptions will shake us, but they will not move us. And these three men showed us that by trusting that God is able, that they were able to face some of the most difficult disruptions that life brought to them. Hey, thanks again for joining us, and we hope that you were challenged and that you are thinking through what it looks like to respond to life's disruptions, even when things aren't going the way we want them to.